Now, in this program, any resemblance between the people you see on the screen and real living people is purely intentional. Because, in fact, they are real, and it's our pleasure to catch them in the act of being themselves.
Hey guys, Rogue Nation here with you. Tonight we're going to be watching a video, a training video actually, on First Amendment auditing. And it comes to us from the Georgia Municipal Association, and it is a training that they provide to their cities and their counties. So when people say, hey, are you guys making changes? This is definitely a video you can show them that indicates that yes, we are making changes in the right way. So let's sit back and enjoy it. We'll talk about it throughout. We're going to skip some parts. They show some videos. We don't need to watch those. We know what a good audit is and a bad audit is. So without further ado, folks, let's go ahead and get into the video.
Welcome to Cities Connect, where we discuss issues that matter. In this episode, we're discussing a practice every government employee needs to be aware of: First Amendment audits. We're joined by 3 First Amendment experts who will explain what these audits are and what city officials need to know to ensure they remain on the right side of the law. Claire Norins is an assistant clinical professor and director of the University of Georgia School of Law's First Amendment Clinic, where she represents clients in federal court on a range of First Amendment and media law issues. In private practice, she specialized in issues of First Amendment, policing, and discrimination. Claire previously served as an assistant attorney general for the state of New York and as assistant director of UGA's Equal Opportunity Office. She's also a board member of the Georgia First Amendment Foundation. Colton Carpenter is a student attorney with the University of Georgia School of Law's First Amendment Clinic and serves as a distinguished law fellow at the University of Georgia School of Law. Mackenzie Ferguson also is a student attorney with the University of Georgia School of Law's First Amendment Clinic and a member of UGA's Journal of Intellectual Property Law. We appreciate Ms. Norins, Mr. Carpenter, and Ms. Ferguson for sharing this important information with us, and we hope you enjoy their presentation.
My name is Mackenzie Ferguson, and we are really excited to be able to share this presentation with you today. So we're going to start off talking about what these audits actually are, and then their application and how best to prepare and deal with them. So starting off with what exactly First Amendment audits are. The definition that you see at the screen is from the official First Amendment auditing website. So audits are the practice of exercising one's constitutional right to record video for the purpose of educating anyone who attempts to infringe that right and commending those who respect it. So these auditors record interactions with the public officials and post the videos to the internet as a form of activism. The main purpose of the audit is to make sure that the public employee knows the First Amendment rights and that they are also respecting the rights of the auditor. And most of these auditors post their videos to YouTube. So one of their main purposes is to generate content and more subscribers. So the more controversial, the better for the auditors. However, the main successful audit is one in which the auditor is treated the same as they are without a camera. So the theme that you're going to see kind of throughout the entire presentation is that we really encourage you to be tolerant with the auditor. As long as you make sure that you know your First Amendment rights and that you respect theirs, the audit should be a pass for you. So now we're going to talk about a case called Dunn v. Fort Valley. And in this case, Dunn was an auditor, and he was arrested after taking pictures and recording videos in the public areas of the Fort Valley City Hall. During this audit, he drew the attention of different employees who eventually called the police once Dunn refused to tell them why he was recording. So he brought an action against the police officers and their supervisors, claiming a deprivation of his First Amendment rights and an unlawful arrest under the Fourth Amendment. So during this case, we got a really nice quote from U.S. District Court Judge Tillman Tripp Self. The First Amendment protects the right to gather information about what public officials do on public property, and specifically a right to record matters of public interest. Pretty simple rule. So this quote nicely summarizes the First Amendment protection in auditing and also states the Middle District of Georgia's opinion on the rule itself, stating that it's a pretty simple rule to follow if you know your First Amendment rights. So we've additionally seen a lot of courts.
Okay, guys, we're going to pause it right there because we already know about Smith v. City of Cumming. The last case that it went over, Dunn versus Fort Valley, Middle District, Georgia. If you folks out there haven't read that case, I highly suggest that you do. The incident, of course, he was an auditor, was captured on film. I showcased that audit that led to that case last Thanksgiving. So if you haven't seen it, go check back to my my videos about a year ago. I can't remember the title exactly, but it had something to do with turkeys. It was a Thanksgiving Day release. Definitely a great audit. You should check it out if you haven't seen it. And definitely read that case if you haven't seen it. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to skip past the Smith v. City of Cumming because we already know about that. Now they're going to play some videos here. We're going to skip past those. I'm not sure who the auditor is in this one. But we know what a good audit is and what a bad audit is. We don't need to waste time. Want to just show you what they're training these folks.
Gonna be your public safety annex building. Good job, guys. Thank y'all.
Okay, thanks, Colton. So I'm going to ask you once again to type in the chat what you think went well. And while y'all are doing that, I wanted to address one of the comments that I didn't see before this video started. But there was a comment about how YouTube auditors try to upload footage that makes the public look bad, and it could be possible that they had talked prior to the start of the video to the woman. So as having watched the entire video, there was no prior interactions before the secretary started to approach the auditor. And most of the time, they upload these full YouTube videos that you can check out. And I do acknowledge that auditors may edit videos to be unflattering to the public officials. So being aware of that is important, and just trying to be polite throughout the entire interaction so that they can't pick out a bad snippet of you is going to be very important as well. So moving on to this lovely video that we just saw, people are saying the staff were polite and helpful. Everyone was courteous, helpful, no threats, professional, engagement. So I think overall, we really see how this is a lot better of an interaction with the auditor. None of the people acknowledged that he had a camera. There was no interaction about, why do you have a camera? What are you doing? It was clear that the people knew the First Amendment audits and the rights surrounding that. Continued business as usual, which is great. Additionally, we saw that when they were asked for their name, the police officers gave it, which is not something that you were required to do, but I think it just made this interaction a lot more nice and respectful. And then even when he asked for a complaint form, he was handed it with no questions or interactions between them. So yes, this is a great example of a really lovely audit. And these YouTube videos, which we can share out with everybody, this is somebody who constantly goes around Georgia. He has a lot of videos directed towards Georgia, and he is a very nice guy if you treat him with respect. So, and then we are now going to move on to who exactly auditors can film. So there is a difference between filming public employees and filming members who are just in the general public space. So the First Amendment right to record does recognize that you can film public employees in public spaces. This can include singling out these public employees. As you saw in the last video, he pointed the camera to the secretary behind. He also pointed it at the police officers, asked them questions, had direct interaction with them, which is completely allowed since you are the public employee in your official duty. There's a difference when it comes to the general public. I do want to emphasize, though, if they are just generally panning around the room, generally recording interactions, if there had been somebody standing at that desk talking to the secretary beforehand, these are all things that the auditor is allowed to film, since private citizens do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in a public place. However, if they are directly singling out individual members of the public, this can look like something like walking up directly to somebody who is just in that police station, putting the camera in their face and asking them a bunch of really intrusive questions, right? If the public member consents to that, of course it's okay. But if they don't, then that is when you can step in and say, please focus on filming only the public employees, as we are the official people engaged in our duty. So I just wanted to make sure that distinction is very clear, that while members of the public do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in public spaces, if they are individually singled out and in a really intrusive way, that is something that you can go in and interact with. You can also choose to not interact, right?
Now, that's a pretty important point, and I think she's correct, right? Now, I don't think it's illegal for you to go up to an individual member of the public and, you know, put a camera in their face, whatever she means by that, if she actually means like in their face or if it's a couple of feet away, I'm unsure of. But, you know, just walking up to somebody with a camera and then asking them crazy questions, I don't see a lot of auditors doing that. Usually, the public comes up to the auditor, so that can't be considered us singling them out. Now, if they come up to us and they start interaction with us, they're obviously consenting to be involved with an interaction with us. So, you know.
So if we go back to this bad recording that we saw in the first video, if she had not approached him, if she had let him continue filming, then that wouldn't have generated any type of controversial filming as well. So you always have the option to not do anything, right? But if you do see that somebody in public is feeling very uncomfortable because they are being singled out by the auditor, you can step in that situation. And I think there's some questions, so we will definitely answer those at the end. And I will go ahead and answer this one. Is there any limit on filming children who might be in an office with an adult? No. If the child is in a public space, then if they are generally recording in an audit, the child can be filmed. If you see the auditor going up with their camera and pointing it in the face of the child and focusing only on the child, that is something that you can ask them to redirect their camera to the public employee.
Great. So aside from who auditors can film, you probably have asked yourself, where can they film? So we've said that auditors have a right to film public employees, but common sense tells us that surely they don't have the right to film public employees in like their private offices or in the bathroom. Well, common sense is correct on this one. There is a difference in the right to record public officials performing their public duties and recording public officials in private spaces. When you're working at, say, a reception desk, auditors have every right to come and record you because you're in a public space. Auditors have a right to be in that public space and to record basically whatever they can see from that public space. However, under Georgia Code 161162, auditors do not have a right to record anybody in a private space. So private spaces may include, say, employee break rooms, personal offices, or restrooms. And a really easy way to clarify what is and what is not a private or employees only area is through proper posting of signage. Signs can designate an area as reserved or employees only, and they serve as a nice aid if an auditor ever insists on going into a reserved or an employees only area. Now, I just mentioned how signage can help to distinguish employee versus public areas, and this same signage strategy is particularly useful for any kind of reserved area that the general public isn't supposed to have access to. Another sign that you may post in preparation for this that could be useful is guidelines for filming in public spaces. Posting this affirms that you understand that there's a First Amendment right to record, but you also understand that there are limits to recording in public spaces only. Now, along with proper signage, designating who may talk to an auditor if needed can also help make the process go smoother. You should, of course, talk to the auditor in your normal course of duties if they're just asking general questions that you would answer if any other patron came up and asked them. However, if there is a problem, having somebody who has excellent customer service and people skills to be able to step in and help out can just help it go smoother. If you noticed in the second video we showed, there was that gentleman in the light blue shirt that stepped out and talked to the auditor. He was extremely friendly, very helpful, and there's a good possibility that he was the person they had designated to come and talk to the auditor. Also, make sure you know the open records laws. Auditors often ask for public records, therefore it's really important to know these laws. If you're not familiar with open records, you can always reference the red or the blue books that you can see down here at the corner of the slide. The blue book, it's a reference for open records for law enforcement officers, and the red book is open records for government meetings. Both of these are published by the Georgia First Amendment Foundation, and they're both online and they're completely free. And it's fairly common for First Amendment auditors to make open records requests as a sort of test to see if the public officials really know their stuff. So being informed on the policies behind these requests and making sure that all of your employees that are potentially dealing with auditors know these policies can really help make it go smoother. Because that really...
I wanted to stop it there, guys, real quick, and I wanted to commend this guy and these people for putting these trainings together, because as you heard, anywhere where we can be, any public space, we have the right to record, right? And that goes along with, let me pop this up real quick. Now, the training we just saw was from Georgia. This is the Dade City Police Department Policy and Procedure Directive. So this is Dade City, Florida. This is audio and video recording of agency members by the public. This is effective 6/20/20. Now again, these are, this policy specifically is because of the work we've done here in Florida. But let's read down here. It says, with limited exception, private individuals, let me blow this up for you guys so you can read along if you prefer. With limited exceptions, private individuals have a legal right to observe and record members carrying out their law enforcement duties. This right applies not only to activities occurring in public places, but to activities occurring anywhere the individual who is recording has the right to be present. Okay? This individual's right to observe, record, however, does not extend to a right to interfere with the safety of members or their ability to perform their duties. Okay? Down here, recording of members by the public. It says public settings include parks, sidewalks, streets, and locations of public protests. That protection also extends to an individual's home or business, common areas of public and private facilities and buildings. Common areas of public and private facilities and buildings. So now these police departments now are even coming up with these policies of where people are allowed to record, and it's setting the right tone. It's saying the right stuff. Let's get back to this video.
Is the point, is to make this go as smooth as possible. Let's talk about a few ways that you can respond once the auditors are actually there at the office. So number one, and this is by far the most important, just continue business as usual. An auditor really is just another kind of patron, and everybody shouldn't be scrambling or panicking or shuffling and hiding stuff. They're another kind of patron, and you should continue business as usual as if they were just another person. Second, don't try to dissuade their recording or threaten them with citations or arrests. These threats are exactly what drives the high view counts for auditors online, and these threats infringe on the auditor's constitutional rights. And the last thing that any of us want is to be that official on YouTube threatening to call the police on some guy who's just recording what he's constitutionally allowed to record. Now, third, you can also recognize the auditor's right to record as long as they're in a public space. So just saying, yes, I understand you have a right to record in this public space, as long as they're not singling out or harassing other patrons that are around. Recognizing that right can also go a long way to making it a smooth interaction, because the auditor will understand that you know their constitutional rights. And finally, make sure that you train the employees to be knowledgeable about open records requests and be able to respond to them efficiently. Again, this is a pretty common strategy by auditors, is to come and make open records requests. So just being able to respond without having to go and look up what the policy for these requests are can just make it go faster.
So now we're going to get into some examples in responding, but I would like to first comment on the comment that was posted to the chat about people who disguise themselves as member of the press. So I think just in general, it's a great approach to treat auditors and press the same, especially since the First Amendment right to record applies to regular citizens as much as it does journalists. And maybe some of these examples will help you with some of the hypotheticals you've been thinking about as well. So the first example, while filming inside City Hall, an auditor tries to enter a restricted area that is for employees only. So how would you respond to this? Feel free to go ahead in the chat box below and type in just like you did for the videos. And as they come in, we can kind of talk about this hypothetical. Okay, so we have one, politely inform them that they cannot enter the restricted area, ask that they're looking for anything in particular. Absolutely, that's the best thing to do, is to talk to the auditor, let them know that you are aware of their First Amendment right to record, and also ask them to please stick to areas that are public. So this one that we just had about asking them to remove themselves and explain why. Absolutely, you can ask them to remove themselves from the restricted area. I think it would be great to acknowledge that all the areas that are public, you are more than welcome to film in and encourage that. We want to be as tolerant and respectful to the auditor as we can, but making sure that they don't enter really restricted private areas is also something that you are definitely allowed to do. So like I said, acknowledging the right to record is always helpful. And one thing I really want to emphasize here is that whatever an auditor can see from a public area is fair to film. So for example, if on your desk, like the secretary's desk, you have documents that are out and open in the public, they are allowed to film those. They are in the public. So what we recommend is if there's any confidential documents or things that you do not want recorded by the auditor, to place it below the desk or somewhere that is private that the auditor cannot see. And as we've mentioned several times, signs designated employee-only areas from those open to the public is a great way to be able to do this and point to the auditor. This is one of the restricted private areas, but we more than welcome you to exercise your First Amendment right to record in any of the public areas. So our next example, an auditor approaches an individual and asks them why they are there and ask what they are doing. You can tell that this individual is extremely uncomfortable. How would you respond to this situation? I'll give you a couple of seconds to type a response in the chat. If we're trying to think about this and you might be a little bit stuck on this one, I think it's important to think about the difference that I mentioned earlier between filming public officials and filming private individuals. Maybe that will help a little bit. Ask if you can help with anything. Absolutely, right? Coming up to them, continuing business as usual. If they need anything as you, the public employee, is a great way to redirect the auditor to filming only the public officials. Colton, if you would like to post the responses. So here, making sure that they know that the right to record only applies to these public officials, right? And to focus on filming the officials only, since they are the ones who are engaged in their official duties. And then, like I mentioned earlier, intrusively questioning individual patrons is not protected by the First Amendment. So going up to the auditor, telling them that they should please focus on the public officials, and kind of letting the individual know what's happening is also a great way to respond to this. So our final example here, and the last thing you have to participate in, I promise, you notice that the auditor is in the police station parking lot filming police and private vehicles, including license plates. How should you respond? And a great thing to think about here is that first example of the bad audit that we saw. And I'll wait for some responses in the chat. So the first one says, allow them to film and let them approach you if you have questions. That's a perfect response, right? Like I said earlier, not doing anything is sometimes one of the best responses, right? They definitely are allowed to film in areas that are open to the public, especially if this parking lot is not fenced off or says employees only. So not doing anything is a great response here. It won't lead to any type of confrontational thing. Respecting their right to record is important to these auditors. It'll also help you to pass this audit. And one of the ones that I want to mention, somebody says let them film, but ask what they are doing. if they can record public plates, but there may be private vehicles in the lot. So they are allowed to film private vehicles. That is something that we see a lot in these interactions when things get intrusive, because some people don't understand that. Filming private vehicles is something that they are allowed to do. So it would be best just to tolerate and respect them. And you can always ask if they need help with anything. That would also be a great way to kind of see exactly what they might be looking for.
Okay, so after looking at all those examples, you're ready for the First Amendment auditor. But what do you do after you've successfully implemented all this advice today? So after a First Amendment auditor comes through, we recommend that you debrief it with everybody who is involved. Talk over what went well during that audit and talk over what could be improved upon. Afterwards, it's also important to not make a report if the auditor was acting within their legal rights. Now, if there was a real issue, such as, say, the auditor coming into a private space after being told to stop, then you may want to make a report, but you should always be cautious making these reports. Because if the auditor was only filming in public spaces and filming within their constitutional rights, then making a report against them is a form of retaliation, and it could chill their First Amendment rights. And we definitely don't want to do that. So to emphasize this, I want to talk about a couple examples of when First Amendment audits have gone wrong and exactly what the stakes are that we're looking at here. So we have a few examples here of how not to handle auditors videoing public officials. A few of these cases are particularly relevant. And so you see on the third row down, Cop Watch Atlanta. So this is a case that happened in 2011. It involved a citizen who was videoing an arrest by police, and the police told him that he was not permitted to record them despite all the parties involved being in a public space. The police ultimately confiscated the recorder's phone, which he was recording on, and when this case settled out of court, the Atlanta Police Department paid out a $40,000 settlement to the recorder. And this is on the low end of the settlements that get paid out for some of these cases. The second case, which Mackenzie mentioned at the beginning, Dunn v. Fort Valley, which is a little more than halfway down here. This is a case where a citizen who was a First Amendment auditor was trying to record the lobby of a city hall when he was reported by the staff as a suspicious person. Law enforcement was called, and they told Dunn that he could not record anything in the lobby. The situation was escalated, and ultimately, this auditor was arrested. His camera was confiscated. He was cited twice for criminal trespass, and he was barred from entering the city hall further. So the city government then refused to reply to all of this auditor's open records requests that he made. Essentially, everything we've been talking about today about what to do, the opposite happened in this case. The law enforcement was the main point of contact. An arrest was made. Retaliatory charges were brought. Open records requests were ignored. And this settled strongly in favor of the auditor. And that was a $100,000 settlement in favor of the auditor. This same auditor, just below the second Dunn case, was also recording in Marshallville. He was recording in a public space. And similarly, this reached another settlement with the city, and this settlement was for $95,000. So just from these two instances of public officials mishandling auditors in some way, they paid out almost $200,000 in settlements. So improper handling of these audits can lead to really substantial payouts. So it's critical to implement the steps and strategies that we've discussed today to try to minimize that liability. Thank you. All right, does anybody have any questions for me or Mackenzie?
You have the right to record, so you could definitely do that. But I think that would just escalate the situation even more. If it was up to me, I would probably just respect the auditor's right to record, right? They wouldn't get any type of video of you filming them and any type of bad interaction that might happen between that. And then additionally, you just letting them know that you know your First Amendment rights and that you respect theirs and let them film
So anyone can be an auditor. Anybody who exercises their right to record in a public place and record public officials could be deemed an auditor, whether they assign that title to themselves or not. And I think the point about, aren't they trying to set you up? Some of them are. And so that's why we think it's the best approach to, really be as respectful and tolerant as possible, and not rise to their bait, in other words. Because some of them are looking to maybe get a settlement out of it. Some of them are looking just to up their viewers on YouTube. So, you can just kind of rise above that, let them go about their business as long as they're not invading private spaces or harassing individual patrons. And it'll be over faster and without incident for you, hopefully.
A lot of these auditors, just looking at some of their YouTube channels and the stuff they post, they're not trying to set anybody up. They really believe in what they're doing. And the big benefit they're getting is YouTube views. So of course, they're looking for these controversial kind of confrontational things, but they're not looking for big settlements. They're looking for YouTube views.
I would say if the meeting is open to the public, if it's not a closed door meeting, then absolutely they are allowed to film in there. But if this is a private meeting and there are no public officials doing their official duties, then that would not be something that they'd be allowed to film.
All right, guys, so there we have it. Again, this is put out by the Georgia Municipal Association. And I do have the training PDF if anybody wants it. The link to this video will be in the description below in case you want to go and watch the videos that they played for the students or whatever for the seminar here. You can go ahead and watch those and see what they consider a fail and a pass. But it's pretty much what we would consider a fail and a pass. So yeah, guys, I want to thank everybody for watching. Leave me a comment down below in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this, because again, this just illustrates that we are creating change. I mean, there's no denying it. And these people are actually getting the right message, right? That we can record in the public spaces, even in the buildings, right? And I just showed you it's now a policy of the Dade City Police Department, Dade City, Florida, that it states specifically if we have a legal right to be where we are, we can record there. So, all right, guys, thanks again. And remember, there's always going to be another video because government cannot stop violating our rights, right? It's like a ritual for them. They have to do it. So we're always going to see more videos. I'm always going to expose these videos, and I'm going to get out whenever I can here and there. We're going to be going out this week, hopefully. So stay tuned, folks. All right.